Thank you. Welcome, folks. This is the April monthly general membership meeting for the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. If you are new to this space, we are a true coalition, about 50 to 60 plus member organizations that represent folks working in human services, serving meals, food banks, housing, shelter, outreach, kind of across the gamut here. Legal aid, peer organizations. We've got community allies, and we partner a lot with our government agencies as well. And our whole goal is really working towards housing and homelessness justice, making policy and systems work better for people and meet their needs. We have a really packed agenda. Usually how we start off is just really a review of our agenda. So my name is Jody. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Programs Manager here at the Coalition. I have my colleague Sarah Robbins giving a wave up there, Rachel, Tim, our Executive Director, Allison. We all come together as a team to put these on every month, and I'm really excited. Hopefully you all can see the agenda that we have up there. You do have the ability to change your name for your little Zoom box. We love to see names. We love to see pronouns. We love to see how you're connected to the coalition. We love everybody that's introducing themselves in the chat. We often don't have time for everybody to really come off mute and do that. That being said, we are recording. We always put up a really amazing blog after the fact that sort of summarizes all of the information that we were able to share with each other, resources, presentations. The video goes up. Any resources like in the slides or PDFs will be put up as well. That'll probably happen about a week after the fact, so look for that next week, and we'll send an email follow-up when that's all ready to go. If you don't want to be included in this recording, just stay on mute. You can have your camera on. We love to see faces. We also know that's not always the moment and the position people are in, so cameras off is okay too. We are really good about monitoring the chat, so if you do want to participate but don't want to be included in the recording, go ahead and just drop stuff into the chat and we will be monitoring and checking that. Closed captioning is available, so if you just go down to the bottom and you can toggle on that live transcript closed captioning, you can enable that as well if that is something that is helpful for you. So the coalition loves our partners at Healthcare for the Homeless over at Public Health. They have a new nurse leading that work over there. She is here to talk, introduce herself, and then share about an amazing monthly harm reduction naloxone program that she is running. We have a couple folks from Catholic Community Services here today to share with us. We've got the Tenant Law Center resources. They're going to do a little presentation on their new resource line, connecting folks to legal advice and lawyers and resources, as well as learning about evictions on folks' record and what rights folks have and how that can or can't be shared. And then the HEN folks, the housing and essential need folks, are going to be here to share the amazing testimony that they gave during budget advocacy at the state legislature this year. Council member Girma Zahalai is going to be here to talk about the crisis care levy. That is, a vote is happening in 5 days, folks, 5 days. So if you haven't received your ballot, if it's not hot in hand or already back in a ballot box, we will share the King County Elections Office number so you can get that, find out what happened to it. You can also print your ballot. So we can talk a little bit more about that if we have time later. We're going to do maybe some legislative update sessions and some coalition just sharing and announcements. But really, our annual meeting happens in May 18th. If this is a 2-hour meeting, so we extend it by a half hour. We're going to really do a legislative wrap up at that point, because by then everything will be sort of wrapped up And we'll have all the latest and greatest to share and sort of how we're thinking about what that leaves for our work for the coming year. So if you haven't already registered, we're going to drop that link. There we go. Thank you, Tim, to register for that. That is, again, May 18th, third Thursday, 9 to 11. In addition to a legislative wrap-up, we also do board of director voting for our member agencies. They can vote on a slate of candidates for our board of directors. And then we usually have a cohort of elected officials to come and talk with us as well. So all a little TBD, we're working on it. Rachel, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. And if I could invite someone to read our mission, vision, and values statement. We like to start out our meetings in a really communal solidarity space. So if anybody is willing to read that, I thank you.
Miss Rosemary, I guess I could do that.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Our mission, we mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. Our vision, a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone has a home. Our values, equity, justice, and collective action.
Thank you, Rosemary. And before I hand it off to our Healthcare for the Homeless Network colleagues, I also just like to mention that these are public open meetings. Everyone is welcome. That being said, if you are someone from the media and representing in that capacity, we do ask that you only quote from official presenters or coalition staff. If there are others that you need to get in touch with, please reach out and we can connect you to the right folks at the right agency to learn more about that program or those agencies. So that being said, I would love to hand it over to Ellie Navidson, the new clinical quality lead at Healthcare for the Homeless. Thank you, Ellie, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jody. Yeah, hi, my name's Ellie Navidson. I'm the new advanced practice nurse specialist clinical quality lead. It's such a long job title, I'm sorry. Over at Healthcare for the Homeless. And yeah, I was just coming to introduce myself, say hello. My pronouns are she, her, or ze, zir, whichever works for you. And I wanted to let people know that if you haven't heard yet, we're trying to do these sort of monthly trainings on overdose prevention and harm reduction, just to acknowledge the fact that more and more folks are dying of overdose in the county, and that a lot of those folks are unfortunately some of our homeless neighbors. So those have been going on for a couple of months now and have been pretty well received, and will continue at least through the end of the year at this cadence, and probably going on after that. My colleague and I, her name is Flora, who is also helping me with these trainings. So we're also working on putting together just sort of a general harm reduction for drug use training. So keep your eye out for that. And these are going to come out in our Healthcare for the Homeless Network bulletins. That's really all I have. I saw that I have 10 minutes on the agenda, so I'm going to give you some time back, Jody, to make the agenda less pressed, because I really don't need 10 minutes to be like, hey, there's some trainings happening. But yeah, thank you all for having me, and it's lovely to be here with you.
Thank you for being here, Ellie. I appreciate a little time back. We do have a lot to share. That being said, if anybody has any questions for Ellie, we do have a little bit of time for that. And I might just connect with you after the fact for ways that folks can sign up for that Healthcare for the Homeless Network listserv if they're not on it, so they can be hot in hand when those trainings come out, and how to register. And then we will also share those out as well. So I'll just pause.
I have no idea how to sign up for that listserv, but if we get like a list of emails that are interested, I will get them to the right place.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's above my pay grade, knowing how email works. I don't know.
And it looks like Allison's got a question in the chat. When are the trainings being held, and who are they really targeted for?
Yeah, sorry. The trainings are targeted for homeless service providers, just kind of anybody who's serving homeless folks in any capacity. So we've had folks who work at shelters, libraries, clinics, all of that stuff. And we've designed them to both teach people how to respond to overdose and also allow like a moment for communities to talk about what they're seeing in the field, to sort of keep people as up to date as possible, because we're going to be able to tell sort of anecdotal stories about what's happening in drug use communities probably a little more quickly than we're going to get that data back from, say, the medical examiner's office or whatever. And they are typically toward the end of the month, but we're kind of scheduling them 1 month at a time, and we're trying to move them around the county. The next one that is coming out that has any space in it is in June. And that's going to be in our bulletin tomorrow, the sign up link for that.
Great, that's wonderful. Well, if you wouldn't mind sharing that, we can share that out as well.
Okay.
And I think it's wonderful that there's sort of a very practical skills component to this training, but then also, you know, a moment to sort of share what folks are seeing. And it sounds like also maybe a moment to sort of connect with others that are, you know, seeing these really, really traumatic experiences that folks and maybe responding to them as well. So that's wonderful. And Allison, I thought I saw you come off mute, so.
Well, thanks. I was just going to say, first of all, hello to Ellie, welcome. And we're so glad to have you join us, and you're really welcome anytime. I'm just thinking, I see a number of people saying already that they're interested. So, you know, we will, of course, as Jody said, share the information about trainings out. I'm wondering if you have anything that you might be able to offer, Ellie, because these, because this is an enormous spike in what has already been a crisis. If you have anything you'd like to offer to folks, if they're interested in getting more information about resources for themselves or the folks they work with between now and June. If if you just have any good resources that you like to share that you might offer up today.
Between now and June, yeah. I will send you my little like cheat sheet that I hand out to folks who come to the training, so that at least has sort of the nuts and bolts of what I think is the most important information. Yeah, and then if we wanted to schedule something else, we could potentially do that depending on how many people were interested. So yeah, we can touch base about coordinating.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, totally.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you being here. We will definitely connect and get folks with the emails coming in. Make sure you get that. We'll get good information from Ellie and share that out as well. And we'll be in good communication about how we can partner and support this work, because it's so hugely important, and really, really thankful that you all are doing that over there at Healthcare for the Homeless. Thank you. I'm sure we will have you back, as well as maybe other sectors of the Healthcare for the Homeless Network team in the future. And certainly it's a space that if you all have information that you're really wanting to share out, always just reach out and let us know, and we can get you into an agenda as well. I am going to hand it over to my colleague, Tim, to introduce our next presenters. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Well, awesome. I think that in the spirit of continuing along with sharing resources that can be really helpful to providers, as well as some of our unhoused neighbors, I am excited to introduce some of our guests from Tenant Law Center to talk about some resources that can help folks who are facing eviction or may have experienced evictions in the past and are looking to regain access to housing. Yeah, let me just hand it over to Michelle Jones, who I think can introduce themselves better than I can. Take it away.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me and us. I'm just going to give a brief little summarization of what the King County Tenant Resource Line is for. And then I'll pass it off to Casey, who can talk about evictions and OLDs, which is Orders of Limited Dissemination, which I'm surprised I knew as the non-legal staff member of the Tenant Law Center. I'm the program development specialist, and my role is some outreach, some organizational networking, and a small case management role. So, without further ado, the King County Tenant Resource Line, I think I've dropped a pretty much summarization of what I'm gonna say in the chat. Well, that's all in the chat there. When people call, we're partnered with the Tenants Union of Washington and staffed by attorneys and volunteers from also TU and the Housing Justice Project. When folks call, it's a brief, follow the prompts, press 1 for this, 2 for that. And they'll be connected with paralegal. We'll do an intake and they'll be connected to an attorney. It's really awesome. It's live. It's busy. There'll be some wait times. And sometimes we're not able to get back to everyone, but you can always get a call back. We do the best to call everyone back. It's all of King County, but we're not able to take a whole lot of King County cases. As Casey will be able to further explain as well. We are closed. That's from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we're closed holidays and some kind of, since we're a program of Catholic Community Services, we're closed some of the Catholic holidays too as well. And that's pretty much all I got there. Does anyone have a question? Do I have time for one?
I have a quick question. So thank you so much for sharing this. Again, this sounds like something that's taken a while to coordinate. And from talking to you a little bit, I've heard that you've received a lot of people who are in need of support around, preventing evictions, who have reached out to you. So it sounds like y'all are really busy.
Yes.
Can I ask you, if there is anybody that may not be able to call, I understand that this is for a person to ideally prevent eviction by gating resources to prevent that. But is there a point in the process that a person would no longer be able to get support from the tenant resource line?
We do not. Well, firstly, you can't be a landlord. So landlords are out, but really it's a low income. No, there really isn't. Aside from being above AMI.
Okay. Well, if anybody else has questions for Michelle, please raise your hand. Yeah, Amanda, do you have a question?
Wow, you see what that's me. Oh, you're on mute. Or not.
Your
No,
audio
I'm
is not
muted.
working.
If you want, you could type it in the chat. Yeah.
And while you're typing, Amanda, Michelle, I know you said you put this in the chat, but for anybody that doesn't have access to the chat, and it's also nice to just include it in the recording. So it looks like this is for any low income tenant in King County that's received an eviction notice, an eviction summons, a subsidy termination notice, which I don't know what that is, or requires a reasonable accommodation due to a disability. And it sounds like they might have a number of options when they call. They might get connected with self-help resources. They might actually get it connected with an attorney. And there's interpretation services. So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of
Okay.
these things that people might need help with, and then how they might, actually go through the phone line to get to the correct resource.
All right, good call. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to answer Amanda's question in the chat here real quick. Unfortunately, with code violations and things like that, it would be they would need to contact SDCI. And that's what we would do, probably likely refer them. It would have to be an SDCI referral.
And what is SDCI?
Seattle. I'm going to have to,
Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections. I contacted them due to water damage in a previous unit. They're surprisingly helpful.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And just to be clear for the recording, that was a question about if landlords are not keeping units up to code, can folks reach out to the tenant resource line? And like Michelle just said, it sounds like folks should reach out to STCI if they live in Seattle.
And I think it would have to be a pretty, they're pretty swamped right now too. Actually,
if you live outside of Seattle in King County?
I do not.
If anybody knows, feel free to put it in the chat. That could be good.
So if you call from outside King County, what will happen is that you're going to be redirected to resources that are local to you.
Great.
Does supportive housing fall under the heading of low income? Probably. I mean, it probably depends on the supportive housing program. One thing to note too, sorry, Michelle, I'm just going to jump in.
No, go ahead. Casey's going to have a lot more experience.
So if you call in and you're not covered by the Residential Landlord Tenant Act, we call it the RLTA, it's RCW 5918, then, there unfortunately likely won't be anything that we can do to help you. Sometimes I know, depending on the structure of the supportive housing, it might not be covered. But if it's not, you can call in and find out, and we'll figure it out from there and send you to resources that can help. And of course, Michelle is our knower of all resources. So we adore her.
Also, you said you didn't know was it a subsidy termination notice? That would be like a Section 8 voucher, losing a voucher, a project-based voucher, or a public housing unit. And what was the other thing you wanted some clarification on? Did Casey just cover that, Jody?
Oh, I was just thinking that, if I'm a tenant, what might, and maybe I don't quite know what I need, what might that look like when I call in? Who might I get connected with? I mean, and then how might that branch out? I think that might just be helpful. I always like to know that kind of stuff before I call.
I thought about it. I did not do the test and call the line myself, but you'll choose from prompts, a paralegal or an intake specialist or someone will talk to you and get a picture of your situation. And then you will be contacted with an attorney, and a lot of it will send you self-help materials, a lot of whatever you need that can help your situation, and decide if you need representation. Casey?
Yeah, so we can't guarantee representation. If you're sent to an attorney, you will have the opportunity to ask them questions. There are only so many of us at the Tenant Law Center, unfortunately. So we, it can be hard to get representation, but we're going to give you as much information as we possibly can to make sure that you can take steps on your own. And if you talk to, somebody, a paralegal or someone from the tenants union or even an attorney, and they give you next steps to take, then, and you take them, that they don't work out, then you're of course welcome to call back and figure out, okay, what do I do now?
That's amazing. I know when Tim and I were connecting with Casey and Michelle about this, they were talking about, that the volume of calls was much more than they had anticipated, which I think speaks to the need, and which is all the more reason and importance that, both Michelle and Casey reached out to us to say, hey, we think this is a good resource to share with your folks. And Tim and I were like, yeah, that sounds fantastic. And it sounds like, and which is really lovely, and then we'll move on to your actual presentation here, unless there's any other questions coming in through the chat, Casey, but that really, folks maybe don't need to know what they need. They just need to know that they might need help or a resource, and that you all are going to help them, understand what's going on and sort of get them to where they need and can follow back up with folks. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, I mean, it always helps to understand, this is what I take issue with, or this is the outcome I am hoping to achieve, because that will make it a lot easier for the person you're talking to say, okay, you need X, Y, or Z. But of course, the people who pick up are going to be happy to work with you to figure out, okay, this is what you need, or maybe actually, why don't we send you over here to look at this information instead?
Awesome. That is great. I wanted to just quickly grab a question that I see in the chat, because I do feel like it's relevant to this part of the conversation. And then I think we can move forward. Justin asked if supportive housing falls under the heading of low income for folks in permanent supportive housing, it sounds like.
Yeah, and just like I mentioned, it's kind of going to depend. There are rules under the Residential Landlord Tenant Act that impact whether or not you're covered by that particular statute. So, oh geez, I should have these memorized by now. It's basically, if you're it's part of a program, so you're living there, but you don't pay rent, and you have to do, attend certain meetings and things like that. That can potentially mean that you're not covered by the RLTA. That's what we call it, Residential Landlord Tenant Act. We're landlords, we've got an alphabet soup, or pardon, landlords, lawyers. I can talk. Maybe I need a little bit more coffee. Or for example, one of the examples is like a convent, that's not going to be covered by the RLTA or something like that. Or if you're in a care home, you could potentially not be covered. The lawyer answer is always that it depends. But there will be certain situations, and if we can't help you, then we'll figure out what resources we can give you that will at the very least send you in the right direction.
Sounds like a good policy is to call and see what resources might be available.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it.
And I just want to emphasize, this is a great tool for this, as well as the next resource we'll talk about. It's a great tool for anybody who has recently been housed, or anyone who is a tenant and low-ish income. I mean, that includes potentially myself, service providers, other community members, family members. This is a great resource for a lot of people, and we want to let people know about it. On that topic of eviction, I do want to move the conversation forward to cases where folks may have already been evicted. Perhaps they weren't able to receive resources in time, or were dealing with a really challenging case with their landlord. Yeah, let's talk about a legal resource that a person can use to essentially have options for tenancy in the future, because as I think, as a lot of us know, eviction can really impact access to future tenancy options. So with that, let's talk about order of limited dissemination, Casey.
Well, hello all. So you have met our lovely Michelle Jones, our program development specialist, and I am Casey Burton. I am a senior staff attorney at the Tenant Law Center. And today we're going to be talking about orders for limited dissemination. And so this is essentially a statute. It falls under the RLTA, the RCW 5918 that I was talking about. And this is the specific provision under here. So this is the statute we're going to be talking about. You don't have to worry. I'm going to break it down. So this is not just all at once that you have to read this. So when would you want an order for limited dissemination? We call them OLDs because order for limited dissemination is much longer to say. And essentially, this is something that you might want to look into if you or a client has an eviction record and it's impacting their ability to find housing. And so it can accomplish certain things, but it unfortunately can't fix all the problem of having an eviction on your record. So essentially what an order for limited dissemination does, it's a court order that tells tenant screening companies, you cannot report the existence of this eviction case to a potential landlord. So when you do the tenant screening and the landlord gets the report of like, if you have these debts or you have this eviction on your record, it can keep tenant screening companies from putting the eviction case on that report, but it's limited in what it can accomplish. So if there's a money judgment against the client, that's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't impact that. It will still be there. It's not going to get the debt or judgment off of the credit report of a client or yourself. And it does not eliminate the court record. So if there's a very motivated landlord who is going through the court website and looking up people's names, because you can do case searches, it's not going to make that disappear. So there are three primary bases for an order for limited dissemination, as you can see here under subsection 1 of the statute. So essentially it's without basis in fact or law, the tenancy was reinstated, or there's other good cause. Those are the three general reasons. And the last one, of course, is a bit of a catch-all. So the first one is without sufficient basis in fact or law. So this is a situation where perhaps the landlord files the case, or they start proceedings and their case was dismissed, or maybe they even never finished their case, they filed it and then it just kind of sat and didn't go anywhere. That means that the court did not issue a court order finding that the landlord's claim was essentially correct or that the landlord was right. And so if the case was dismissed because the landlord didn't, do the proper notice, or they weren't able to prove the facts of their case, then that might be an instance where you can get an order for limited dissemination. And this one's a little bit technical. It says the tenancy was reinstated under a specific statute or other law. So reinstated is kind of a weird term of art. And it basically means that you either caught up on your rent and you no longer owe your landlord any rent, or you paid off the judgment. So it sounds kind of weird to say reinstated when you're paying off a judgment from a case that's like 5 years old, but just the way the law works is it's very odd and technical, and that technically counts as reinstatement. There are also rules under the RLTA. So let's say you go to court, you lose, and there is a money order judgment against you. You technically have 5 days under the statute to pay that off and reinstate your tenancy. If you are working with a client who has a landlord debt on their record from an eviction case, then you can, if you're able to pay that off, the client's able to pay that off, that not only gets rid, that then handles the issue of it being on the credit report or the tenant screening report. But then since it's been paid off, you can now go to the court and say, look, the landlord got the money that they were owed, so please give this order for limited dissemination. And sometimes you can do settlements. There are a number of options. And so, and just to clarify, a judgment, so I keep using that word, and it's, being a lawyer, we use the same terms over and over. So of course it means something to me, but normal people probably don't think about those words every day. And so it's essentially the court making a decision and saying, okay, this person gets money because they are owed it. So I'm ordering that this person can be evicted and that they owe X amount in rent. And so that would be a judgment. And then of course we have our catch-all. So I've tried to find case law that provides more guidance on what exactly this means, and it doesn't exist, for better or worse, because sometimes, cases can create some bad law. And as you can see, it's subjective. It may depend on what court official you end up in front of. So what you might think be good cause, or one commissioner would agree with you that is good cause. Another might say, no, it's not. And so some instances where I've been successful in making good cause arguments. I was working with a client who was unhoused, and we said, look, she's got this opportunity to be housed. It's time sensitive. She does not have anywhere to live. She's out on the street right now. And this doesn't get rid of the judgment. So the landlord can still collect on that money, but we need to hide this so that when she applies to housing, the eviction record doesn't show. So it doesn't look like, oh, this person who applied to live here has like 3 evictions. None of those evictions show. Again, the judgment might show on the credit report, but at the very least, you don't have evictions listed on your record. And, you know, perhaps you have somebody who's unhoused who has a voucher or some sort of subsidy that they're about to lose if they can't get into a housing, and they can't get into housing because they have an eviction on their record. That may be good cause. Or if you left your unit and the landlord proceeded, probably shouldn't have, but they did anyway, then there might be good cause because you complied with the landlord's notice, and the landlord shouldn't have gotten that order to evict you in the first place because you weren't even there anymore. So it's a bit broad, which, and a little bit vague sometimes, but you know, the flip side of that is that gives you a lot of room to work with. So the process is essentially that you're going to file this motion. It's a motion for order for limited dissemination. You file that, you note the hearing, you serve the landlord, and then you go to hearing. And the hearings are pretty straightforward. A lot of folks find court intimidating, and it can be. But you're just saying, look, based on everything that I wrote here, I think that I should be getting an order for limited dissemination, or my client should be. And the court will say yes or no. They generally say why or why not. And if they don't write that on the order, I always recommend that you ask them to write that on the order, their reasoning, so that if you need to revise or appeal that way you have the exact basis for the decision that you can challenge. But you know, let's say things go right and the order is issued. Fabulous. You now have your order for limited dissemination. Just to be safe, we always recommend that folks email or mail out that order to the major tenant screening companies. And that's just so you don't have to go through the process of going, okay, I did my tenant screening application. They reported this. They shouldn't have reported this. Now I have to go back and fix it. It's sort of getting ahead of the problem before it even happens. Additionally, there is the chance to get an agreed order. And that means that you work with the other side. So let's say you paid off your debt and the other side says, thanks for paying me the money the court says you owe me. I will now sign an order for limited dissemination, and we agree that you can have this. So you don't have to go through the entire motion and hearing process, because the motion is saying, I move the court, I'm asking the court to do X. But if you have an agreed order where the parties say, okay, well, we're gonna all agree that this can happen, that can save you a lot of time. So I know it's a little bit technical, but your options are either to do an agreed order, everybody is on the same page, or you can go through the motion process. And thankfully, WashingtonLawHelp.org has a packet that provides instructions, provides you with the forms, tells you everything you need to do, and has a list of tenant screening companies that you can mail the order out to when you get it. And there's this link here, and it's my understanding that this presentation is going to be emailed out, correct, Tim? Perfect.
Yes.
So that link will be all yours. Oops. Oh, well, I thought I had a questions slide, but apparently I did not. So I'll do this so that you can see our King County Tenant Resource Line. So I know that's a lot of information. Well, what questions do you have?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you so much for walking us through this process. I mean, this is something that I've never heard of. I think a lot of us, assuming a lot of us non-lawyers aren't aware of this, is I think a question that I want to ask is this something that a person can advocate for themselves, or like a non-legal service provider can use, like by going to the Washington Law Help website, or is this something that you'd need a lawyer for?
Well, if you are a service provider, you cannot represent someone in court unless you are an attorney. but you can help someone fill out the paperwork. And this packet on washingtonlawhelp.org is designed for a person to be able to do it themselves. Now, the court process is in and of itself kind of intimidating, but this OLD process is actually pretty straightforward. You go in, you tell the court, okay, of the 3 reasons under the law I can have this is the one that I'm picking, and this is why, and you just fill it in. They've got all the forms you need on washingtonlawhelp.org. You file it, you serve it, which is just usually mailing it to the landlord. It goes into details. I'm sure you guys don't want me to go on and on about service of process, though I am happy to answer questions about that. So yeah, it is something that you can do on your own. And we actually do advise people to do it on their own sometimes, because you can just get it on your own. I see there's a question in the chat. If there's an OLD and there's a question on the app, have you ever been evicted? Can you say no? You can say no. I mean, shouldn't be an eviction case on your record. And it's like, you know, that case doesn't exist as far as the tenant screening company is concerned.
That's good to know.
What else can I answer for everyone? And I can also drop my email in the chat in case anybody's like, okay, I just needed to let it sink in for a second and now I have questions. See, it's like a useful resource if you're working with somebody who's trying to find housing, they've got an eviction on their record, it's keeping them from making that housing come through. This can help remove that barrier and hopefully get someone into a place with a roof over their head.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so
so
much.
Sorry.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate you being here. Really love this resource. I suspect there might be some sinking in of information and looking at it. So it's lovely that folks can then reach back out either to the resource line or to you or to Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. You are welcome to stay. We would love it in that way if questions come in through the chat, but we also understand that the resource line is quite busy and you're needed. And so we can also connect folks and any questions after the fact. But I am going to pass it on to my colleague, Sarah, so we can learn a little bit about HEN and budget advocacy. So Sarah, take it away.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Sarah Robbins, she, her pronouns, and I'm the policy manager here at the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. And, you know, one of the things that we do here is advocacy ourselves as staff here at the coalition, but we also are firm believers in collective action and getting everyone involved in the lawmaking, policymaking process for the issues that we all care about, namely housing, you know, adding more housing, increasing homeless services, making things you know, more accessible and better for those experiencing homelessness and working towards ending homelessness. And one of the issues that we worked on this legislative session was the Housing and Essential Needs, or HEN, budget deficit. We don't know yet whether our budget advocacy will ultimately be successful. The final budget for this legislative session will likely be released either tomorrow or Saturday, and we will find out. But the Housing and Essential Needs program had about a $26 million deficit, which was going to mean people that are currently getting their rents paid through HEN could potentially lose that housing, and delaying being able to take more people into that program. And I think the staff at the Housing and Essential Needs program did put together a panel of their staff to advocate at the budget hearings in front of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And I personally just found their testimony to be so powerful and such a great example of how all of us, even if we don't have, policy or advocacy in our job titles, but our jobs are to work with with clients every day, that we can all, do our part in adding more resources and making things better for those experiencing homelessness. So we have asked those staff members from the Housing and Essential Needs King County program to come today and recreate their testimony to give everyone a sense of what we all can do. So I will turn it over to the HEN staff to recreate their really powerful testimony.
Hey everyone, I'm Trisha. I'm the director for the HIN program with Catholic Community Services, and we're going to start with our program manager, Kiana, and then we're going to go to Greg, Lonnie, and then I'm going to end it. So Kiana, go ahead, take it away.
Good morning. I'm Kiana Anderson, a program manager for the Housing and Essential Needs HIN program at Catholic Community Services. I am testifying today to first thank you for including the $15 million for HIN to keep the program whole from the loss of federal funding used in the last budget, and to also ask that you please restore the remaining $11.5 million that was part of the COVID funding. As there has not been a decrease in homelessness, this is critical to ensure that we can keep our existing clients stably housed and off the streets. The HIN program provides rent and utility assistance, essential need items, and annual bus passes for clients who are unable to work due to a disabling physical or mental health condition. Our program is currently providing rent for about 2,000 clients and serving 700 more with just essential needs support. About a third of the clients who enroll in HIN are homeless when they enter the program, and all of our clients are living in poverty with either no income or very limited support. HIN's rent subsidies of up to $1,000 a month play a key role in keeping these residents with disabilities housed, especially with the high rent costs in our area and with the effects of COVID that still linger today. This is a critical program for our state in fighting homelessness. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
All right. So first and foremost, thanks for having me. My name is Greg Steen. I'm an intake specialist. And what that means is basically I work the front desk at our new building here at the Phoenix Center, which is an expansion of the Essential Needs program that was happening at RCC, the main headquarters on 23rd and Yesler. I'm glad I have more than a minute. And I'm glad I got to listen to all the presenters at the last Senate Ways and Committee, because they really smashed that into 60 seconds. And I learned a lot from that experience. But I've been working for HIN for about 6 months now, exactly. Yesterday was 6-month mark. And, it's my experiences here are every day is that we have clients come in, different situations, different levels of stress, different needs. And behind me, you can see actually the essential needs bags that we give out. They're pretty robust in nature, with a lot of just life's household goods, personal hygiene items and things like that. And so it's a pretty hefty bag, and it's kind of heavy. And the reason why I know that is because I used to pick them up myself. I was a client probably over about a year ago. I was a client of HIN, so I know what it's like to come in and get the bags personally, and I was working with a unique skill set that could get me a job here and there. But it was a lower point in my life where I needed assistance, and I was on the food stamps, the cash benefits, and one of the things they told me is that you're eligible for HIN. And I was like, what is that? And so they told me. I came up here and got enrolled in the program. And I remember my case manager handed me a big stack of apartments, right? And I was like, oh yeah, good, this apartments, right? So but we all know that's a full-time job too, so when the people come in here, it's tiring, it's exhausting being homeless, right? and there's varying stages of homelessness, right? I think I mentioned at the testimony that I've spoken to a woman on the resource line. We receive calls from our clients, just general queries, case manager stuff, and things like that. And, you know, she was about 76, and she was coughing, she was sickly, you know, and she was. She said that her landlord had put a notice on her door to vacate, right? And she had no idea what she was gonna do, you know. And I was like, man, it's just because you don't see people outside in a tent or on the street doesn't mean they're not experiencing, you know, homelessness and different. There's just so many different levels, you know. You really don't really get a grasp of that until you talk to people, you know. And so we absorb that. We absorb that energy here at the Phoenix Center every day, you know. And so we get an opportunity to field out different resources that we have. You know, I know at the Phoenix Center here now, we're adding to the essential needs by, you know, giving extra items like, you know, mops, brooms, dustpans, towels, you know, things that we get in just to add to that for our clients. So, you know, we definitely appreciate the alliances that are available to us. We're always open and available to support any positive energy that we want to put towards this situation in state of Washington. So I thank you for having me, and great meeting. We'll see you soon. Next, coming up.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you this morning. It's very good to hear everyone and what they do. I'm Lonnie Isaac. I'm one of the HEN case managers. I would like to thank you for your support for HEN by including the $15 million to keep the program whole from the loss of funding, and to also ask that you restore the $11.5 million we received in the last budget, so that clients we are serving now are able to continue to be served, and so that we can hopefully bring new clients over the next year. A little more about me. I was homeless in Seattle when I first got here, and I went to Everett Gospel Mission, and someone gave me a chance. And now I want to give back to the community by showing them there's a better way. But first, you have to start with having a roof over your head. Every day I do intakes with clients, and I hear their stories. Some of the stories are very emotional and touching. Some people come in and are living in tents and trying to go to work at the same time. And they are just asking for a place to have a warm shower, a place to sleep, and food to eat. Another lady was living in an apartment for 21 years and then recently fell on hard times because of her disability. This is the first time she's ever had to ask for help. For people like this, the HEN program helps provide some hope, stability, so that they can get back on their feet. We're asking that you help us so that we can help them. Please increase the funding so we can keep helping those stand in the gap in need. I thank you for your time. I thank you for each and every one for what you do and about to do. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lenny. Good morning, committee members. My name is Tricia Matthew, and I'm the director for King County HEN at Catholic Community Services. I join my colleagues to thank you very much for including the $15 million for the HEN budget to help keep the program whole. That tells me you value it and understand its importance in the community. I'm also here to ask that you restore the 11.5 additional million in the HEN budget to at least its previous level during COVID, so that we can ensure our existing clients stay safe and housed. In addition, I wanted to provide you with the scope of the need. At current funding levels, we are able to help around 2,000 people with rent in King County. Currently, however, in King County alone, there are 9,606 people who are eligible for HEN, and over 30,000 eligible statewide. At our current enrollment rate, we'll have an additional 2,000 more waiting for help with rent by the end of the year. As you can see, the need far outweighs the support we can provide even now without a cut. I know the budget is tight, but cutting into HEN funding would be devastating, and the direct result is that many people will lose housing and fall into homelessness, exacerbating the current crisis. Thank you for your time and consideration. So that was our testimony. Although Greg did take advantage of the fact that we didn't have the 60-second limit to expand a little more as he wanted to do during the actual testimony. So thanks, Greg.
Absolutely. 60 seconds is really, really tough. 2 minutes is tough, which is sort of the standard time you usually get to testify. But in very large hearings like this particular budget hearing, where they have, hundreds of people testifying on the budget on a wide variety of issues, they limit everybody to 1 minute. Well, thank you all. And I also want to say, I didn't say this before, if anyone has never testified in a hearing before, but they want, it's something that you're interested in doing, but you feel like, I've never done it before, I think I need some help, that is what we are here for. We are here to help people with talking points to craft their testimony. We will read and edit testimony. We will be your sounding board to listen to your testimony, give feedback, time you to make sure that you can do it in the time period, and help with, we know that it can be, you can have a little bit of anxiety or nervousness going in front of lawmakers. And we're here to, try and bring down that anxiety level. And lawmakers are, people like us, and they need to hear from their constituents. And so we are happy to be that resource. I believe I just saw Council Member Zahilai join us. I will have Allison. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Allison, do a quick introduction. Yes, I will drop my contact information in the chat.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you to the wonderful, wonderful folks from CCS. Councilmember Zahilai, we're very grateful to have you join us. And I am sorry that you missed just the last 10 minutes, which was a powerful reenactment by 4 direct service providers of their testimony to the Senate Human Services Committee about the Housing and Essential Needs Program. And it was truly, just a wonderful class in how to bring direct service provider and service user experiences into the development of public policy. And I think of you, Councilmember Zahilai, as somebody who really tries to encourage that in your role as a member of the King County Council. We welcome you here to the Coalition on Homelessness. This is our April general membership meeting. And I think we did a little check-in earlier. I think there are a number of people, including myself, who are King County District 2 residents, so direct constituents of yours. And I really want to thank you for making time to come and join us to talk about the ways in which King County funds core services. We are, of course, transitioning our conversation right now in this meeting from focus on state level advocacy, which is, as everyone knows, ongoing as we wait anxiously for the budgets to be released. And we advocate on multiple levels at once. And here in King County, we are coming close to Election Day for the April 25th special election for the Crisis Care Centers, or CCC levy. We've already reminded people, if they haven't had a chance to vote or if they haven't gotten their ballots yet, we've got info about how to replace or how to register and vote on the same day. But we're really grateful to you for taking some time to come and talk about, as one of the champions of this proposal, what is in the proposal. And if you would be so kind as to talk a little bit about why it is that it's necessary to raise taxes in a special election process in order to do some of these core basic responsibilities that the county holds. So welcome very much, Councilmember Zahilai. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you to the whole coalition for having me here today. Thank you for those that framing, Allison. It's always helpful to hear what's helpful to talk about. I never like to be one of those politicians who just comes in and starts talking just to talk. So if those things that you specified are the things that would be helpful to hear about, I'm happy to talk about those things. And anytime I start getting into territory where you're like, we've heard this a million times, we don't need to hear it again, feel free to stop me. And most of all, I want to use as much time that we have together to listen to you and hear what you all have to say. So I don't think I have to tell this group that outside of the COVID-19 pandemic, the shadow pandemic that our communities have been facing is the behavioral health crisis. Since I started in 2020, these issues have been escalating at alarming levels. Mental health issues, substance use disorders, record overdoses, and we can spend a lot of time talking about what are the causes of these escalating issues. Those causes are multifaceted, they're intersectional with the homelessness crisis, they're intersectional with people just feeling more isolated and anxious in these times, they're intersectional with poverty and trauma. But at the end of the day, we know what we have to do, and that is to build out a system where people have the care that they need to heal. And that system looks like somebody to call on the phone, 988, so you don't have to call 911 and send police out for something that doesn't require that. It looks like somebody to show up, mobile crisis response units, people to go out and give you care on site. And it also looks like somewhere to go, physical places for you to go to get the care that you need. Someone to call, somebody to show up, somewhere to go. That's the system that we're trying to build out. And the Crisis Care Centers levy focuses mostly on the somewhere to go portion because we lack physical infrastructure for recovery. That is both on the immediate stabilizing care side and the long-term residential healthcare side. You know, if you break a bone in King County, you can just go and get urgent care. You can walk into a place and get rapid stabilizing care for your physical injury. But if you have a mental or psychological or substance use disorder injury, you have no urgent care options in King County that you can just walk into. There's one 46-bed facility run by DESC, but you need a first responder referral to get into it. You can't just walk in by yourself. A police officer has to take you, an ambulance has to take you, a firefighter has to take you. So in terms of just being able to walk in and get the care that you need, we don't have those options in King County. And I'm talking literally zero. And so that is one of the most unjust and harmful policy decisions in our whole state. So what ends up happening is people go to emergency rooms, people go to jail, people get themselves into all kinds of trouble, people commit self-harm, and it's just a really bad situation. So what the Crisis Care Centers levy tries to do is build out that recovery infrastructure. So it's trying to solve for the lack of immediate urgent care options by building 5 crisis care centers around the region, walk-in places that anybody can access. It's trying to address the long-term issue, which is that if you want long-term care in King County, you're going to wait an average of 44 days. Imagine you're in crisis right now and you want to go somewhere to lay your head and get the clinical support that you need for as many months as you need to recover. That takes 44 days on average for you. What's going to happen in those 44 days? A whole lot of not good stuff. And then the last problem it's trying to solve for is the workforce. I don't have to tell this group again that the workforce who is in this space, mental health workers, social workers, clinicians, they are often making poverty wages to do some of the hardest work known to human beings. And so just like many other government sectors, we're seeing record vacancies in this field. People are just not going into this work or they're leaving this work. And so the levy would also put resources into recruiting, retention, pay raises, apprenticeship programs, career pipelines toward this field so we can grow out the field. So those are the 3 things that the levy would invest in. $1.25 billion across 9 years to invest in short-term stabilizing care through crisis care centers, long-term residential care to build back our capacity of the number of beds we've lost for long-term care, and then also investing in the workforce, which desperately needs it right now. And then the question is, why a property tax? And that's a great question. And that's because, as usual, our state has decided that King County can only raise regressive taxes. We have no options for taxing big business. We have no options for taxing the rich. We are often put in this dilemma where we have to choose between, do we solve pressing problems like the behavioral health crisis by raising the revenues we need, or do we avoid raising regressive revenues that harm sometimes the very people we're trying to help? And so we're constantly stuck between this rock and a hard place because of our state. And speaking of our state, I've been going on a tirade recently, calling out the state, because the state and the federal government actually have absolutely abdicated their responsibilities in this realm. They used to make far more investments in mental health space, in the housing space, both state and federal government. And over the years, they've just been declining their level of investment. And that has led to many of the recovery infrastructure spaces that we had to close down. You know, there was an article written in the Seattle Times last month that said, where have King County's mental health beds gone? You know, in the 90s, before our population boom, we had something like 550 long-term residential health beds. And if you checked in 2019, that number went down to 355. And if you checked in 2021 or 2022, that number eroded further to 244 beds. So the number of long-term beds that we're seeing is declining over time. And according to this article and many people who've researched this issue, that's absolutely because the state and federal government have been defunding our recovery infrastructure for a long time. And so a lot of these institutions have been just reaching their life cycles, closing down. King County actually had to step up and buy one of these facilities last year because it was about to go out of business and close down due to lack of capital investments, operational investments from the state. And so we definitely need to hold our state and our federal governments more accountable, because what ends up happening is that local governments end up taking all the heat and end up trying to solve these issues with imperfect tools like property tax. Meanwhile, all the people who show their legitimate anger toward government usually show it toward local governments. You know, you all see the, anti-Seattle City Council rhetoric and all that. And I'm not saying don't hold local governments accountable. Of course, hold them accountable, but save some of that also for these bigger governments that are a little bit more out of reach and out of sight, and they end up going without as much accountability as they need. So I think I answered some of the questions that Allison mentioned, but happy to talk through anything else.
Thank you so much. Yes, we seek to hold elected officials at all levels of government accountable, and you're absolutely right. We have had a terrible disinvestment, and it has really come home in a particular way for people without homes who experience behavioral health challenges, not only crises. And I believe the one remaining residential, quasi-residential program that you referenced is run by DESC, the Downtown Emergency Service Center. One of the things that we hope to have you back to talk about, hoping that the Tuesday election goes well, is the implementation plan, because I think among our member organizations, there's a lot of wisdom and essential knowledge and experience about how to ensure that the crisis care centers are set up in a way that they not only work for, but actively welcome people who are experiencing behavioral health needs and experiencing homelessness. I've invited folks to put questions or comments in the chat. I'm going to, if I may, just sort of paraphrase something that came to me in a direct message, which is to invite you to reflect a little bit with us on the connection between the crisis care centers levy, which we're all voting on, I hope, between now and the 25th, and the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy, which the council is currently setting the rate for. And you know, the way in which we have been talking about this in our own member conversations is that it's the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy, the housing and the services that are funded through it that help keep people from needing a crisis care center. And I wonder if you could just share your thoughts about the interconnections between those two property tax funded levies that are the way in which King County makes these kinds of core investments.
I think you summarized it perfectly, Allison. The VSHSL invests upstream in all of the things that result in the well-being of so many communities that we care about: veterans, seniors, low-income people, and it invests in those communities in a very holistic way. Housing, employment services, even some behavioral health, trauma-informed care, supportive housing. And hopefully, if those communities have that level of upstream investment, like you said, they will need less of crisis care, because crisis seems to be the last stop on a long string of upstream failures. You know, it's a complex issue when we're talking about crisis, but if you go and talk to somebody who is at the end of that long chain of upstream policy failures, and they are at a bus stop overdosing, which we often see a lot, what happened in that person's life before they got to that point, to that lowest point in their lives? You know, who gave up on them? What housing were they kicked out of? What job opportunities didn't they have? Who broke their heart? What community that they were a part of was displaced through gentrification and displacement? You know, what did they see overseas in a war that shouldn't have happened? So many things that we can go upstream and talk about, and VSHSL is a little bit more before that point. And then the crisis care centers would be, if you are at a bus stop about to overdose or experiencing extreme the disease of addiction, do you have somewhere to go where you can get the stabilizing care? And after that, once you're stabilized, do you have somewhere to go to get long-term care? And after that, do you have somewhere to go to get permanent supportive housing? And after that, do you have a place to go and get a good job? And after that, do you have a place where you can go and be part of a community that embraces you and loves you? So it's a long continuum of care that we need, and they're just, I see them as on two different points of the continuum.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you've eloquently laid out what so many folks who are here and part of this work and I do want to underscore for you, we're going to move on, and you are most welcome to stay, because actually the next piece of our meeting is to invite our members to use their voices to take collective action with respect to the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy. You mentioned permanent supportive housing, and we know that that is a proven, effective, and necessary intervention. And we know that a flat levy renewal would reduce the amount of permanent supportive housing that the VSHSL could create by 50%. And that is just unacceptable for those of us who know that that's what people need and that's what we're supposed to deliver. So we are, as you well know, council member, advocating hard for the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy renewal to be at a rate that reflects better what our community needs and what the workers who do this work need, just as the behavioral health care workers need. So we're going to continue that advocacy and give our folks here a little update on what's happened, and warmly welcome your participation in helping to explain there is some complexity to the fact that not only does the King County Council have a decision-making role in setting the rate for the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy renewal. But there is another body, which a lot of folks may not be aware of, called the Regional Policy Committee. And it's made up of 3 King County Council members, 2 Seattle City Council members, and 4 elected officials who hold the position of mayor or council member in suburban cities outside of Seattle in King County. And together, they also, in certain cases, this levy is an example of one of those cases, they weigh in on what the rate of renewal before the voters is going to be. And that's exactly where we are now. The Regional Policy Committee did not express an interest in increasing the 10-cent Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy that Executive Constantine sent over. They didn't actually take a vote on possible amendments that would have increased that rate. Then it went to a committee that Councilmember Zahilai and his colleagues sit on called the Budget and Fiscal Management Committee just this past Monday. And that committee did vote on an amendment that would increase the levy to 12 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. Now, remember, we were advocating for 15 cents and together with all of you generated over 3,000 emails to council members and regional policy committee members about the 15-cent right size and renew the levy campaign. However, now we're looking at 12 cents and we want to generate at least that many emails again to make sure that elected officials in both those bodies hear loudly and clearly that 12 cents is the minimum and there should be no consideration of dropping that rate because our community needs to pay workers, to house veterans and other people who don't have homes, and to take care of our youth, our elders, and neighbors of all ages in between. And the county general fund is not positioned to do that. That's why we have these special levies. In fact, we have a lot of reasons, sadly, to believe that the state budget is going to result in cuts that may go into effect as early as this year in King County, including to core services that you all provide. And we just have to take advantage of the once every 6 years opportunity to renew the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy to make it as strong as possible. Sadly, we think it could and should have been stronger, but right now where we are is 12 cents. So I'm going to invite one of my colleagues to put the link to our renewed, refreshed action alert in the chat. And we'd love to ask you to take action, even if you have before, because we don't get to 3,000 emails by people just sitting back. So please take a moment to enter your contact information. Remember, if you haven't done this before, all you do is put in your name and your address, and the system automatically will send the message to the folks who represent you. And then I think that Sarah has another piece to speak to, or perhaps I might be a little bit behind on our agenda revision, but I know that I have to stop talking and hand it back to either Jody or Sarah or Tim.
Thanks, Allison. I think that we are going to do something that we rarely get the chance to do. We plan for it every meeting, and sometimes, usually, it doesn't happen. We are going to leave the last 5 minutes here, or 7 minutes, as it may be, for all of you to give any member updates that you might have. This could be program updates. This can be community announcements. Thank you so much, Councilmember Zahilai. But I did see, oh, right, great. Amy, take it away. Get us started. You're muted.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you so much. What a great program today. And I especially appreciated the council members' comments about all the upstream causes that all of our agencies should be thinking more about. I wanted to let you know that here at the University of Washington, we have teams of students who are going to attempt to do a point in time count this month at a dozen libraries around our county using the same respondent-driven sampling method that we used in the last count. So many student volunteers are going to be active and engaged around the county. People are going to be given coupons to come and be interviewed. And those people who are interviewed will be given more coupons to give to their friends to come and be interviewed. So that's why it's called respondent-driven sampling. Thank you for noticing when this happens in your area. And I hope you'll be supportive and appreciate the students doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Did you say a particular date or time window and I missed it?
It should be rolling out later this week. I think they will start some of the first ones on Friday at the VA, and it will go for a month.
Thank you very much. And I owe you an email about that. My apologies. Great. Karina, you raised such an important, crucial issue in the chat here, and I want to acknowledge it and say there is a terrible dearth of information. So we are also attempting, I mean, I think many, if not all people are aware that there is a debacle going on. In fact, it's really hard to characterize it briefly because it is so complex. If you haven't read Erica C. Burnett's Publicola articles, they will lay out in pretty good detail what is going on. But there are somewhere between, as we understand it, 100 and 200 people still housed temporarily. They have been moved actually in one or more hotels. They had temporary vouchers for paying for those hotels through the Lived Experience Coalition, through a federal emergency management agency grant. The money has run out. How much money? How it ran out? Many excellent questions remain unanswered. How come this has happened so abruptly? How come people are apparently at this point still facing eviction on Saturday, despite many folks, including agencies on this call, having stepped up to do what is possible, but manufacturing available shelter and housing when our systems are full is not actually a possible thing. So I just want to acknowledge that, leave space for somebody has another comment and question in here, and say, we are attempting to gather information. We're attempting to support those who are attempting to support the people facing eviction. And we also recognize and have said loudly and clearly that we should not be making people homeless as part of the attempt to assist them from homelessness to housing, obviously. And we should not be bumping everyone else to the back of the line because of manufactured crises. So this is a dreadful situation. Sadly, it's not the first time that this has happened, but let us hope that it will be the last. And there are an awful lot of people pointing fingers and a smaller number of people actually trying to intervene usefully. So I don't have something great to say there. Amanda, I'll respond to your question about health through housing separately.
Got a couple more minutes if anyone else has any short updates.
I can give just a really quick, just because of in light of what we've talked about, some great things that are happening at City of Kirkland. So City Council did sign an agreement with King County to move forward with the permanent supportive housing at the former La Quinta Inn. So that's going to be over 100 units for folks, which is exciting. Potential open date is spring of 2024. Also, the city announced the location of the crisis center to serve North King County, which is also exciting for the, someone to call, someone to come, and somewhere to go. And also, I think target date is 2024 for that. So lots of great things happening in those efforts. Thank you.
Oh, and also, Amanda, you want to mention Melly?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Karina. So the Kirkland has hired its first homeless outreach coordinator. We're really excited for that. She is able to kind of create ongoing connections and relationships with our residents who are experiencing homelessness to help connect them to resources. So yeah, lots of great things happening on this side of the lake.
We're at 10:30, but I'm just going to call out Carol's note in the chat, looking for other folks that represent supportive services for veterans and families. So I don't know if you all have connected, in a private message. So hopefully you have. Folks do have the ability to save the chat as well. We also do, so if people want to share emails or connect, please do. Yeah. Yay group. We actually got some updates in. This is like a goal of mine that I mean, as wonderful as I think our meetings are every month, I always walk away with like, we didn't leave time for people to chat. And we did a little bit today. So thank you all. Allison, thank you. Compass Housing does SSVF work. And Carol, if there's something specific you need, we will throw some of our emails into the chat so folks have it. But it's been a lovely meeting. We have had amazing guests, presenters, information sharing, community building. Don't forget to take that action on the Vet Seniors Human Services Levy. We need to let them know. That's key, important. We'll probably be having a message coming out shortly as well that you can share out with colleagues that weren't here today. You can share that bit.ly as well. Be well, have a lovely day, and we'll see you next month. Take care, folks.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you.